Morning, class. I want to talk to you a little bit about the Islam Nation, and we talked about this. This is what you studied last week in class. But I want to give you a little bit about biblical background to go with that. Just being the pastor that I am, wanted to have a chance to throw some Bible history at you when I could. So in the Old Testament book of Genesis, in chapter 12, we're introduced to a man by the name of Abraham. God told Abraham, "You're going to be the father of many nations." Now, Abraham was an old guy and didn't have any kids. But he and his wife Sarah, they took off on this adventure together to start this new nation, which would later be known as Israel. Well, many years passed, and Sarah continued not to have any kids, and so she decided to help the Lord out and take matters in her own hands. And what she did was, because she couldn't have kids, she sent her servant girl Hagar in to have relations with Abraham, and thought the lineage would continue but would go through Hagar, but Sarah would have property since it was her slave girl. She would have the property of the baby. Well, Abraham complied, and he had relations with Hagar, and she had a baby, and they named him Ishmael. Well, God was pretty upset with Abraham and Sarah because of this, because he said, you don't need to help me. I'm God. I can do things on my own. So at the ripe old age of 100, and Sarah being 90, Sarah conceived and gave birth and had the baby named Isaac. Now, the way that you probably understand from the Old Testament is the firstborn is the one that usually gets the rights. They're the ones that gets the inheritance, the heritage. But Ishmael was really never God's plan. That was Abraham and Sarah's plan. So what Sarah said was, you know what, I'm not going to let this Ishmael guy have my inheritance that my son really gets. So they sent Hagar and Ishmael off into the wilderness to go off on their own, so that Isaac, Sarah's son to Abraham, would be the rightful heir, and that's who God had intended. Well, the Islam Nation goes with this idea that the firstborn is the inheritance, and that's the true person that should have gotten the blessing. So the Islam Nation has always went through Ishmael to say that he was the true son. And the Christian, or biblical Christianity version of this says that, well, man took matters in his own hands, so Isaac is the true heir. So when you hear the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, they're talking, that's the Christian faith going through the promise of God through Isaac. But with Islam, they go through Ishmael, because he was the first son, he was the promise. Don't know if that helps any, but that's just kind of a little background as to how biblical Christianity and Islam, they separate. In all honesty, we'll be getting into Judaism here very quickly, and as we do, you'll see that these three religions are very, very different, but yet they all kind of go back to the same, the father of the nation, Abraham. It all begins in Genesis chapter 12, where we have Isaac and we have Ishmael, and then Judaism will go off and just follow Abraham himself, and looking forward to the promised Messiah. Those three religions had a very, very similar beginning through this one man. Hope you're enjoying World Religions. Know that I'm here if I can help you with anything, and I really enjoy reading your weekly papers. Hope that you've picked out some books and doing some collateral reading and getting ready for your project. If you have questions with that, catch up with me. Have a great week.